first item on our agenda is the Project 351 acknowledgements. And at this point, I would like to introduce the OMS principal, Katrina Crowley, to introduce Project 351 and present Stoughton's nominees for this school year.
Good evening. Project 351 is a youth service movement in Massachusetts. 351 stands for the 351 towns and cities in Massachusetts. Every city and town selects an ambassador to represent their town or city, and the ambassadors meet together. It kicks off for launch day, and they kick off a year of service opportunities. These ambassadors really work within their communities through different service projects throughout the year. So at O'Donnell Middle School, every single year, faculty silently nominate deserving students in 8th grade for consideration for the Project 351 ambassador. Faculty were asked to nominate students based off of qualities of leading with an open heart and mind, exemplifying values of kindness, compassion, humility, gratitude, demonstrating a strong ethic of service, and respecting the dignity of all and the diversity of culture, race, heritage, and lived experiences, and students who reflect a strong potential and a desire to learn and to lead. This year's Project 351 ambassador is Victoria Chasen. Victoria, or Tori, embodies Project 351 values of compassion, humility, gratitude, and kindness. She demonstrates compassion for others. She has academic strength and exceptional teamwork in all of her activities that she does. She's involved in our school community, and she's a role model student for others. She's involved in our school band and is also a member of the Stoughton High School marching band. And she has been participating in our morning announcements, the nightly news, in 7th and in 8th grade as one of our news anchors. Since 6th grade, Tori has spent her time after school helping teachers in their classrooms, asking if they need any additional help, and staying after school and working with them, giving back to our school community. In addition to Tori, we've had 6 other students in our O'Donnell Middle School community that we are also recognizing tonight for being nominated. These are Krista Mikhael, Joel Omadiji, Caden Pham, Angel Fan, Sophia Singer, and Ava Thibodeau. We're going to be recognizing all of these students tonight for their hard work, character, and commitment to service. Before we recognize the students, though, I will be turning this over to our Project 351 ambassador, Tori, who's going to share a little bit about her experience at launch day in January.
Hi, my name is Tori Chasen, and like Ms. Crowley said, I am the ambassador of 2025. On January 25th, I attended launch day at Boston in the JFK Library. Attending launch day was one of the best experiences I've ever felt. It was so fun. I got to meet so many new people from all towns and cities of all over Massachusetts, including Martha's Vineyard. When I got to the library, everyone was so welcoming and friendly. There were many amazing speeches by our governor, Governor Healy, alumni, and even other 8th graders. After we got on the buses to our service place, I went to Cradles to Crayons, a nonprofit organization for children in need of clothes. We were there for about 3 hours, even having a dance party in between. When we got back to the library, we all just hung out together. Overall, I had the best experience ever, and I can't wait to meet up with everyone else and making more memories along the way.
Okay. So we'll be recognizing and calling up our Project 351 ambassador and students for recognition. Sorry, it's okay. You going with first? Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. Tori Chasen.
Oh, we get to
We'll take a quick picture. Get rid of the box. Enough pictures.
Krista Mikhail.
Congratulations.
Joel Digi.
Congratulations.
Caden Pham.
Congratulations.
Sit right over there. Nice job. Best of luck.
Angel Pham.
Congratulations.
Nice job.
Sophia Singer.
Congratulations.
And Ava Thibodeau.
Congratulations. Shake like it. Awesome. We'll have the students step outside. We're going to have all the students step outside for a quick group picture, and then we'll be right back. And first of all, thank you to the parents, the grandparents, the families that are here. Great kids. You should be proud of them.
Celebrate our students. One of the things I love about Project 351 is the silent nomination, and that it celebrates students who are great and may not get otherwise get recognition.
I'm going to be petted.
All right, the second item on our agenda is public comment, as we have no one signed up. Let's move on. Our student advisory representative was not able to attend tonight. I would like to try to arrange a meeting with our student advisory, so I'm working on that. That brings us to number 4, superintendent update. Dr. Baeta.
Madam Chair, to you and the members, thank you so much. Good evening, and thank you for celebrating our students today. It's great to hear from you. We'll do the same thing with facilities. I thought I hit it. Thank you. The triennial plan is underway. We met yesterday as a leadership team, those of us that will be leading different groups, and so we'll meet our deadline of coming to the committee in June. Probably get the draft to you as early as late May, so that way you have it to peruse. And the building committee roadshow will be published after the meeting tomorrow. I have asked Mr. Pickett, who has provided me every event that is taking place at any of our schools between literally after February vacation through the election, so that the building committee can work on putting together their roadshow utilizing that. We also have a secondary list for the record for the building committee, all town events that we know of that are going on. So you'll see some of that after tomorrow. The 12th is our regular building committee meeting, which is open to the public. And the redistricting committee meets on Thursday, the 13th at 6. That is a virtually only meeting, but it is open to the public as well. and you'll be hearing some updates on some general information, which members of the committee will get tonight, and there'll be some more details going to the building redistricting committee as well. The handout on the transportation fees is simply that. It's a piece of information for you to have. You do not have to vote on this at this time. It's just the beginning process of doing that. And it'll come up under another agenda item with transportation that'll bring you up to date on what's happening there. And that is all I have at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for the superintendent? Lindsay, I saw you.
Yeah, sorry. Dr. Bayetta, do you mind just recapping the recommendation for the bus fees, just to make sure if anyone's just tuning into the beginning?
Yeah, so we've been working on a per-student cost of $375 outside the scope of the final mileage recommendations that you make, which is part of the pay and ride. And there is students who are pay and ride on free and reduced lunch travel for free, that process. But we've also added a family cap for the first time as an example. So $375 for a single, $750 for two, but it's $750 max for a family. So if there's a third child or a fourth child on the bus, we're not collecting those fees. Since I'm on this, I might as well just say this later on in the agenda, but the bid is out, and we anticipate that the bid come to the school committee sometime in March. We don't know how many people are going to bid and all of that, but the process has started, and then in March we'll also start to finalize all of the recommendations on the transportation handbook and or the policy as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments, Karen?
So I know that when we were considering taking the bus, one of the hardest things was having two kids in there couldn't afford the lump sum of the $700 or $800. So I know that in the past it's been a problem of trying to get some kind of payment plan together. However, it would, I know for a fact, help out families if somehow it could be broken up, even if it was just in half now, half later, half in August, half in September, something. I would like to put that out there, that I know that would be a help for families for some kind of payment plan.
Yeah, so that's a decision of the school committee in terms of, policy. So if you decide that you want to go down that route, or you want to allow for the administration to allow for those families who come forward and ask for that request, you can do it in a number of different ways. I've done both. I've done the drop-dead cost. I've done 50% the day you sign up, 50% before a certain date. It's really, like you said, one at $375. We don't know what the economy is going to be doing like. It can be difficult. At the same time, running around trying to collect those fees can also be problematic in order to try to be equitable to all of those that should be paying in order to take the bus. So it's a balance.
Is it possible to start now for the next year, so families can have the time and they can start putting money away towards the
Yeah,
school?
as soon as you vote the final number, we will publicize and put together a calendar of signing up. And we're adding a receipt process to that, electronic receipt process to that, which was a recommendation I think that came from, I think it was you, Lindsay, if I remember correctly. So that both parties have a receipt that it was actually, the application was actually done, completed, and everybody knows that it was done versus what we deal with, which is about 45 to 50. I did it, but electronically we see nothing. And then you can decide on the payment when you want the payments to be made. If you go, again, it all depends on what the committee wants to do. It's a committee's decision policy as it pertains to payment. I've seen situations where it's all over the place. So I won't even try to give you examples because it's really what you think is in the best interest of collecting those fees. We will start collecting fees right where you register, so you can go in, register, pay. That has been the practice of the district.
I guess the question is, when's registration start?
As soon as the final decision on something like fees are done.
Okay. So
It'll be fees and then any mileage changes that you make, which right now we're not recommending any mileage changes for next year.
I will note this is coming up later in the agenda. If we want to take it up now, I need to disclose something. So if the committee wishes to take up the transportation fees, I need to make a disclosure.
think we need to take up.
Okay. Do we need to vote to take it up, or do we just request to take?
You can move it up.
Okay.
And then make your disclosure.
Okay, so we're going to take the agenda out of order and go ahead and go to the transportation update. I need to note that I have filed a disclosure by school committee member or charter school trustee of a financial interest and a general school fee as required by 930 CMR 6.09 because we are discussing transportation fees and my children ride the bus. So I can't, now that I've disclosed that, I can participate in this fees, but I do want to be clear that this has a direct impact on my family. So I should be impartial and take this into consideration, but.
So now we can raise the fees, right?
I'm not saying anything yet, so, okay. So continuing on with this discussion, so we have the recommendation and that, so there are a couple moving parts here. We have the registration process and we have the fees, which are tied together. Are we looking at a different registration process for next year? Or is it going to be very similar to the one?
It's very similar, but I just think clearer communication on the technology side of things.
Yes. Okay.
And I think we have a transportation manual coming out.
Yeah, we have, I'm sorry. We do have a handbook coming out in terms of taking the policy that is actually procedural and making a policy and the handbook the procedures. And we do have a draft if Mr. Ford would like to pass it around. And again, you could take this as information and take it up at your next meeting.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
I think I want to just backtrack a little bit and talk about why we're even discussing this, because we had pledged to use the increases in SOA funding that we had in previous years to waive fees. However, we're facing budget pressures. One of the budget pressures we're facing is the increased cost of transportation, and we anticipate the bids that we get coming back anywhere from 10 to 20%, probably around a 15% increase over previous years for that transportation cost. So understand the uncertainty and difficulty for families thinking about what the future holds, but also thinking about our own needs and the need to provide transportation for students. I'd like to open guest, Chris.
Through you to the superintendent. I swear to God, I pressed that stupid button. All right. Sorry about that, folks. Through you to the superintendent, will the fees that are being recommended address the issue of enough buses or the number of slots available for bus transportation?
No.
Thank you.
This is a first come, first serve policy that we have.
That is how you currently are doing it. So like I said, in the next couple of meetings, you'll finalize all of that, and then we print, we go.
I think based on, and I know we just got this now, but I think based on the experience we had in the summer with first come, first serve, I think I'd be interested in revisiting that. Does this revisit that, or is it?
No, it's.
Okay.
It's remained. It's in there.
Got it. Okay. I think that might be something we need to look at, just because I know that caused a lot of challenges, we'll say.
Perhaps the furthest away.
Yeah. Who, is this the policy working group that would take that, or is
This
this?
actually is not a policy working group. This is the superintendent.
Gotcha.
This is a procedure. The policy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
was split. EEA is what we're, I think, talking about today.
Okay.
So this is now a superintendent and a curriculum.
Gotcha. Okay.
So do you want me to provide a little clarification?
Absolutely.
We had a transportation policy that read like a procedure. So what we did is we took the existing transportation policy, converted it into a set of guidelines. We made some adjustments based on feedback from the superintendent, as well as our transportation person, to get something that reflects what we're doing with the recommendations that the superintendent embedded. And then you're going to have the opportunity to vote in a transportation policy that moves away from this, but establishes this document so that, so while it falls under the purview of the school committee, it actually is managed by the superintendent the way it should be.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I think that's helpful. I think,
Thanks, John.
and I also have, just got this and haven't read through it, so I will probably have like better, more specific input for the next meeting, but I'll.
Just as an overall, what was in our old policy, which was very detailed, essentially it became a much more, broad policy, and then all of that was essentially, most of it put in here. So whatever you see in here really isn't going to be a big surprise.
Yeah, and the idea there is, right, that like policies should kind of be evergreen and the details get updated and the procedures as needed, so that makes sense to me.
Yes.
Thank you.
And there is something in there that's going to say, obviously, the school committee has the final authority. Whatever wording we chose.
Right. The policy really focuses on state laws and regs, and really around procurement of transportation services.
Okay.
But it will reference the guidelines and will link directly to them. Pertaining to your question, the very top of page 2, page numbers, will be the place that you'll want to look at, and we would love any alternative wording, because I know that we're also providing some feedback to the assistant superintendent around the deadline.
Okay. Thank you.
So at this point, this is informational, and we will take this up at a future meeting. Do we want to provide feedback in the meantime? Do we want to save it for the meeting? Does it make sense to?
I would put it through Jonathan,
Okay.
who's got the template of it.
Okay.
Make suggestions. I would defer to this committee informing Jonathan on thoughts, ideas.
Okay.
Before your next meeting.
Okay. Anything else on transportation?
Just to double down on what Lindsay said, I'm thinking about populations that may struggle with the technology, the language, and how are we going to address those additional barriers so there's equitable access if they want it to bus transportation. The first come, first serve is the easiest way because you can tell when someone's application was submitted. You've got a timestamp there. It's going to be a lot more work to do it by distance or things of that nature. So maybe there's some way we can do it through the schools or the building administrators, but think about the process we might want to deploy to ensure, like if there's a workshop or something at the library where people can come and sign up in person if they need to, what can we do to make sure that everyone who wants bus transportation does have that opportunity without overcomplicating the process?
Okay. Anything else on transportation? All right, so to be continued. Definitely look through that and then provide Mr. Ford with any feedback. If there are no objections, we'll go back to our agenda, new business, and the first item on that is the Stoughton High School new schedule review. And at this time, I'd like to invite Stoughton High School Principal Juliette Miller to present.
Evening. Welcome. All right, so thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to talk about the new schedule and some of the impacts that we've seen. We are, as you know, September 2024, we implemented a new high school schedule with the goal of improving instruction and engagement and achievement, reducing confusion and transitions, providing flexibility and in-school interventions, and enhancing student learning experiences. And so we have been collecting data, and we're going to continue to collect data throughout the school year. And some of that data I'm going to share with you tonight. So we have a faculty survey that went out at the end of term 1, and a similar student feedback form that went out around the same time, a little bit earlier. And then, of course, I have some update on some discipline, which I think is related to the schedule as well, but there's lots of little pieces that we can talk about there too. So you have some charts and data in front of you that came directly from the Google Forms that were submitted. For faculty, we had 75 members actually provide feedback. And so I'm not going to go through each of the graphs. Obviously, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of points there, so I'm going to try to pick out some of the highlights and the things that I think are of most value, perhaps. Of course, stop me, ask questions anytime that you have them. So the data was a good sampling of all the different flex block groups that we have. We group them by grade with some mixed groups. So we have some populations that we are mixing, like our EL. We have an EL flex block. We have a couple EL flex blocks. We have an all-dead flex block. So those are the mixed groups. So you can see from that first chart there that we had a pretty good sampling of faculty respond from the various different levels, which was nice. Of the 81% of respondents, or 81% of respondents are seeing students during their flex blocks weekly. 46.7% see students 2 to 3 times per week, and 34.7 are seeing them 1 time per week. And just for some context, teachers would see their flex blocks 2 to 3 times a week. So if a teacher is reporting that they see students 2 to 3 times, that's every time they have flex block, they're seeing students, whereas 1 time might be 50% of the time or a third of the time, just to give you some context. On the days they don't have flex blocks, they have professional collaboration. Most students are reporting to teachers during flex block to make up tests and quizzes or classwork. And 60% of respondents identified extra help as one reason students report to them. The majority of teachers are reporting that flex block time is being used productively at least some of the time. And teachers report they observe students in their flex block using time for brain breaks, classwork, homework, extra help, makeup, and counseling appointments, with the majority observing students using the time for brain breaks. 80.
Considered productive time?
In my opinion, yes. Yes. And I think for most teachers as well. 85% of respondents think the time allotted for flex block, 40 minutes, is just right. And 81% think the time for professional collaboration is also just right. 73% of respondents think that taking 4 classes a day is just right. And 90%, a little bit more than 90%, find the schedule very easy to follow. Most teachers report that they're using direct instruction and group work, but they've reported a variety of different instructional techniques that they're using. We provided faculty some professional development around long block use and strategies during the full professional development day in November. And during this school year, during early Thursdays, Ms. Crowley and I are leading both buildings in lesson planning and implementing and tying in the various different things that we've focused on as a district over the past few years, but incorporating differentiated instruction, SEI, SEL, ELL strategies, literacy. So they've been working on lesson plan developing at the high school for those 79-minute blocks.
Sorry, really quick
Yeah,
question.
absolutely.
You said that was in November.
November was the
Professional development.
professional development specifically, and then early Thursdays we are doing.
Okay. Was it before or after this survey?
So this
went out?
survey went out right around that same time, November 7th, and the professional day was probably 2 days
Like
before
election
that.
day? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Sorry, I was just trying to contextualize.
Yes.
Can I ask if you have any comparable surveys, as the instruction styles from the previous schedule? Do you have anything? I mean, it might not be exactly the same, but
Yeah.
are we seeing any trends? I mean, one of the things that we talked about with this long block was having more group work and more interactive work.
I have to go back and look. I wonder if we have some survey. I can't imagine we haven't surveyed them at some point when we went to that new schedule several years ago. I can look and see what I have for sure.
Could be part of your NEASC data
Yes.
collection.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can take a look at that. Other questions? All right. Yes?
On the faculty survey, one of the things, there are comments in the back which I really like. I
Yes.
love the ability for people to say whatever they want to say as opposed
Absolutely.
to just checking the box. And one of the things that kept on coming up was that it seems like a lot of faculty would like to see a rotation. So the first block is not always the first block. And there are a variety of reasons for that, from kids that might be tardy. They're not tardy for the same class all the time. So if we have the rotation, they're actually tardy for a different class. And at the end of the day, they're more tired and their attention is not as great as in the morning, so switching the class around. And I was wondering if that's something you see as a problem to rotate or possibly something to go back and study.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Faculty Council took that issue up on over a long period of time. It was a big discussion amongst the Faculty Council and through departments. And the problem with rotation, there's a couple of things. We want to try to create a schedule that is less confusing, and the rotation in our old schedule was confusing. We wanted to bring in programs like internships and connect to dual enrollment programs and early college opportunities and CTE programming, perhaps at Southeastern or other vocational technical schools. And if you have this rotating schedule, it's hard to release students or build a schedule in a way where they're not going to miss classes as a result of that rotation. We also looked at the fact that we had a pretty significant tardy pandemic at the high school, for lack of better words. We had students that were reporting tardy daily and frequently, and in the old schedule, they would end up missing up to maybe 4 classes, depending on how late they were coming into the day. And they would end up missing like a whole period. And so, at the high school level, our attendance is tied to credits. And if you have too many absences, you lose credit for those classes. And so what was happening is now, instead of maybe losing credit for 1 or 2 classes, they were losing credit for 4 classes because they were being late so many times that they were missing that first period class for each day. So now they're losing credit in 4 classes rather than just 2 classes, which is what our current schedule allows for. But not that we want that to happen, but certainly it mitigates sort of, if you're going to be late every day, maybe you're losing credit only in 2 classes now instead of all of your classes. So we thought about that too. We instituted a new policy into the handbook at the end of last year as well about our attendance, where if students were coming in at the halfway point, they would be marked absent rather than tardy or present. And that was taken up for a couple of different reasons. We were seeing kids who would miss all of the first period class and come in the last 2 minutes and be marked present, and they would have missed all of those minutes. There was sort of no incentive. We have found that by putting this new policy in place, that they still might be coming late to class, but they know that they have to get there by that halfway point or they've lost credit for the class, so they are getting to class at least for half of that period. So we've seen that positive spin. We were prepared for the unintended consequence that they might say, oh, if I'm going to be marked absent anyways, I'm just not going to go, I'm going to wander. And so we have some things in place to prevent that from happening, and it seems to be helping, bless you. So although, and we are trying to collect some tardy and attendance presence and absent data as well, so I'll have that at the end of the year to compare to last year, but we are seeing better attendance at the high school, and I think it's because we aren't rotating, in part.
So it's been studied.
Yes.
The other question?
I'm just going to add on the attendance. Central office is also looking at all schools' attendance on a weekly basis, and our high school attendance is absolutely up.
Good. Very good. The other question I have is that there were a couple comments that concerned me. They pretty much said that they weren't able to finish the curriculum, or they're behind in curriculum, and that obviously is bad, but I was wondering if there's something that can be done to help these teachers or figure out what the issue is so they can finish their curriculum. Because they outright said something like 80% to this point of last year. They've met only 80% of what the curriculum they've covered last year. That's concerning.
It's definitely an adjustment. I mean, going from what we had to this is going to take some adjustment. It's not going to happen overnight. And some teachers are jumping in with lots of passion and enthusiasm for making those changes and making those adjustments, and some are just a little bit slower on that uptake. You can't move into this new schedule and just teach the way you have always taught. It's just not possible. You're seeing kids every other day rather than most times every day with the old schedule. You have 80-minute blocks, 79-minute blocks instead of 42 and 90. So there has to be some adjustment, and so that will come with time. And some of the PD that we're focusing on this year on the early Thursdays, they are taking that time to work with each other to build lessons and look at curriculum to make sure that they're making those adjustments for those 79-minute blocks and sharing best practices. And it's, you know, the PD we had for the long block in November, that specific PD, is also about that. And so they have some resources that we're, you know, encouraging them to use and make changes. And now I bet if I surveyed them now, you'd see some of that reduced because they're starting to get in a groove. They're starting to feel it. We're starting to hear those conversations. And there will be some people that just don't like the schedule, so they will always have a less than positive spin to their responses as well. So, but I think we are going to see a reduction in that when we survey them at the end of the year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Julie, I was just going to say, it's not usual that a building principal will just take all of the comments and give it to their school committee.
I know.
So I'm just going on record to say that getting all of the pats on the back, it's great, but Julie also took the opportunity to say, it's okay to disagree, it's okay to put it out there that you have some issues with it. That's not the way it's always done.
It's excellent. Like I said, I love open question. Say what's on your mind.
Well, I've learned with my faculty that's a necessity. They need the opportunity. And we want to be transparent, so I appreciate you acknowledging that, but we don't want people to think that we're trying to hide anything from them. So,
Julie, I was wondering, to Armando's point about the feedback and the comments at the end, and I thank you for providing this in advance. I had spent a lot of quality time with it this weekend, looking over the data points. The feedback, is it able to, can you segment it by subject matter? Like, for example, for the folks who are routinely saying, you know, I'm really struggling, and my husband, who's a math high school instructor, we sat down and we worked out the math of how many minutes they had in the school year by the old schedule versus the new schedule versus like a, you know, kind of a normed comprehensive schedule that doesn't, you know, have long and short and kind of all the things. And there is a reduction of minutes. There's definitely a reduction of minutes. But the question is, was that criticism coming from like math? You know, or was it coming from English, for example? I could see it. So is there any context for that?
absolutely. So, every day we have one of my departments has a professional collaboration. Actually, multiple have had the same day. I spend every one of those flex block periods in a department all month long. So I also have the context. Although this survey is anonymous, I have a good idea of where those comments are coming from because in those collaboration times, that's their opportunity to have FaceTime with me, where it's me and like 10 of them rather than me and the whole faculty on Wednesdays when we have those long block or those faculty meetings. And so I am pretty aware. I'm not going to call them out here. I know where those comments are coming from. We've talked about them extensively, and they really, you know, they're coming from a place where they want to be good teachers and they want to give the kids the very best that they can. And so we just need to sort of provide them with the support and the encouragement that we can make those adjustments, and we have that flexibility to do that.
Yeah. Two more questions. One, you had mentioned that if we had a chance to do the survey over, we might see a difference. Will we have a chance to do the survey over is question one. Because it would be helpful to see how they might have adjusted since November, since the break, you know, a little more planning time, the, you know, midterms are done, et cetera. And then I just lost track of my other question, but I'm sure it will catch up with me at some point.
Yeah, we definitely will survey both the students and the faculty again towards the end of the year, so that we'll have those 2 points to sort of compare. Of course, we won't know if they're the same people providing the answers, but we'll get some idea of where we're at.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And then for the student survey, the questions very much mirrored the faculty in as much as I could, so that we could sort of compare them a little bit, apples to apples, as we could. Of the student survey, 222 students responded, so that's about a 20% return rate. And there were 14 questions. Most of those students who responded report that using FlexBlock for homework, which was about 90%, brain breaks 84%, classwork 78%. Of course, lots of other reasons that they were using FlexBlock, but those are the high ones. The respondents were nearly split in half when judging the length of FlexBlock. 51% thought it was too short, and 47% thought it was just right. Similarly, when they were judging sort of the length of time for classes, the students, 50.9% felt it was too long, and 47.3% felt it was just right. So we're in that 50-50 mark for both of those. Most students identified worksheets and independent work, tests and quizzes, group work, and direct instruction as activities they were engaged in, and thought that independent work and online tools like Kahoot and those items are the things that are most helpful to them. Those were more just sort of gauging what's happening in class, more than just thinking about schedule. Well, what are we doing in class, and is it matching what the kids need? And so it's nice to compare those questions to the ones that were similar on the teachers' survey to see if they're matching their needs. Most students report needing a break at least sometimes during the 79-minute period, and most students report that not being rushed, more time for questions and or help are advantages of the schedule, followed close behind by more in-depth learning. And several students also added their own selections, adding time for homework and FlexBlock and less crowded lunches as advantages to the schedule, which they added on their own because there was an option to add other. I've also done, I didn't include in this packet, but I've also run 3 FlexBlock focus groups with students where they currently are voluntarily selecting themselves. And as we move on, I'll start to pull kids maybe who didn't sign up, but so that I can get multiple different kinds of voices. Those FlexBlock focus groups have been really exciting and wonderful to participate in. I asked the same 5 questions for all the groups, and they have the opportunity to kind of go around and put their answers up on the Post-it notes, and I record all of those, and the kids know that their comments aren't being attributed to them, so that when I report them out, they're sort of anonymous. And so the 5 questions I've been asking the students are: beyond grades and test scores, how would a school know if it was successful? What do you wish your teachers and administrators knew about you? What classes should SHS add or keep? Because that was what we were talking a lot about before program of studies. What is one way we could make SHS a fun, enjoyable place to be every day? And then this sort of broad what-if question where they could add anything they wanted or talk about anything. The schedule has come up a lot in those focus groups, and the classes that we offer and the things that we're doing during those classes have come up a lot, so that information's been really helpful. I plan to continue that throughout the year as well, and so if I'm invited back at some other point to talk about the schedule, perhaps I can share some of that information more directly with you.
Julie, I remember the question that I wanted to ask, and it actually pertains to the student section. So it's really interesting to see the perception of instruction style and what teachers think they're doing and how the students perceive it. So the teachers do all note, of course, that they do direct instruction, or lecture style, which is extremely common, but don't see that as like their primary method that they use the most during that block, but yet the students see it as the method that they use the most and as the least effective. Is that something that you have thought about addressing in future professional development?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, tomorrow is our faculty meeting, and now that I've sort of presented this information to you, it was my goal to add that to our faculty meeting agenda tomorrow, to talk about these survey results, share them with them, and talk about those very items that, point out those discrepancies. Yeah, to start that conversation.
Enjoy that.
Thank you. All right. Anything else about those surveys? Okay, well then, I'd like to talk about the discipline data because I think that is significant, and really excited about talking about that. So I looked at, I pulled data from September, the first day of school in September to December 1st, so not really our term, a little bit longer than term one, from both 2023 and from 2024, and I compared those, the various different data points that I could pull through either Power School or our referral forms. And so I guess the biggest thing, the most notable thing is that the number of office referrals has drastically and significantly decreased. So in 2023, teachers referred 892 incidents to the main office for processing for discipline. That's only in September to December 1, 892 instances. This year, it is down to 109. That is statistically significant. And like blows my mind. First of all, that my administration was processing 892, so you figure times 4, if that's what the average is for term, that is quite a bit. And that doesn't necessarily include the unexpected instances that might happen, a fight in the hallway. That's not necessarily going to get an office referral because we're just going to be there and deal with that. So when you think about the size and the amount of work that they're processing, it's unbelievable. But we are down to 109 for this year, which is amazing. And there's some charts that show sort of the different incidents. You'll see that the blue color is 2023 and the orange color is 2024. And just visually taking a quick look, you can see that there are far less different kinds of incidents that have happened this year than in previous years. And for the things that are repeating, those numbers are, for the most part, less. There are a couple of times where different kinds of incidents have popped up this year than we did not have last year, but they're still across the board is far less. The second image there is the number of offenders, and that's pretty much going to be the same graph as the total incidents. The only thing that really is different there is when you look at the number of fights versus the number of offenders. That category is going to have more offenders than actual fights because usually it's more people involved. So most of the other data in that is similar to what you saw on the first page. Really nothing else has changed there. At the high school, we use lots of different interventions to try to correct behavior, encourage students to make better choices, help with peer interpersonal conflicts, and we have peer mediation, which is a great program that we have. We use restorative practices, social probation, office sessions, restitution, student detention room, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, and of course, in extreme cases, expulsion. Those are very limited. Some of those I can't really pull data out of Power School to measure, but some of the biggers like peer mediation in school, out of school, and expulsions is something that we report to the state, so it's easy for us to be able to pull out of there. You can see that peer mediations is nearly cut in half, 29 to 17, and the same is true for all of them. In-school suspensions, 12 to 6. Out-of-school suspension, 37 to 16, and of course expulsions, 1 to 0. So even those consequences are down, and I think there's a couple of things going on there, not only because we have less incidents, we have less of those consequences, but because we are using other measures like peer mediation and restorative practices, and trying those different strategies so that we aren't going to the in-school, out-of-school expulsion route and trying to avoid that. So I think those numbers speak volumes for the work that my administrators are doing. And then also linked to that report was that the actual raw data, if you were really interested in seeing how many girls, how many boys, what grade, the different offenders were coming from. If you really wanted to dig in deep, if that is your thing, you can click in there and see what that is. Of course, no student name or information is part of that. So we've seen really big decreases, and I think there's a couple of different things that can really support why that's happened. First of all, last year was the first year we had a full office, meaning all of our administration positions filled, including the new position of dean, and all of our administrative secretaries' positions were full. That was the first time in a couple of years that we had that full boat. And then all of those people have returned this second year. And so that team who worked really hard last year to, become a team and work together and establish protocols and procedures and consistency have all returned again this year. And so those things are already in place. The kids already know what to expect. That consistency is there. And so I think that's been a big help. The same is true with hall monitors. We went to 5 hall monitors last year, full boat. All 5 of those monitors, 4 of those 5 came back this year, and we've replaced the other one with a new one. And so there, again, consistency, working with our administrative team. And then lastly, I have to argue, although I can't say it specifically because it hasn't been studied or proved, but the new schedule, I think, has a huge impact as well. I mean, we went to less transitions. We talked about that last year at the school committee meeting, or some conversation I remember having with you about why the schedule is so great. The less transitions that kids have, the better, less unstructured times, and so we have less of those. That's helping. Our flex block, which sort of acts as an opportunity for kids to decompress and to relax and to, it's like an adult version of recess, so to speak, but they can also get work done. They can also get extra help. So those behaviors that might be becoming because they're struggling in class, maybe we can end those because they're actually getting the help they need in school. And then, of course, the 4 lunches has been a game changer. The kids aren't crowded. Lunch is really peaceful. They're able to get their lunch and sit down and relax. They're not crammed together. The energy in the CAF is much lower. And it's just been it's had a huge impact. When kids leave lunch, they're not all amped up. And usually after lunch, that's where we're going to have a fight. And that has not been the case this year. So I think the schedule has truly had an impact on the discipline as well. So that is it.
Have you seen our SRO?
Chris.
I've seen my SROs.
I think because there's been a lack of personnel, and I believe the police department is working on that. I know that we had been missing our SRO for a little while, so I wonder what kind of, if you were seeing an impact at all, one way or another, and how often you are seeing our SRO entering the office and entering the school.
Yeah. So we used to have 2 SROs, and now we're down to 1. And so Officer Bonner spends most of her time down the middle school. So she comes up to see us when we need it, when we have some kind of issue, management case that needs to happen. But she also helps with us, when we're going to run drills or security or safety protocols. So, and she's always very communicative, via text and phone. So we have that good connection.
Would you say that our SRO is in the schools daily, or would you say weekly? How often is our SRO?
We should be careful about public safety on that question, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
We're happy to take that under executive session and bring Julie
Sure.
back. And just because...
Or she can say it to you, and you can let us know next meeting.
It's always it's an issue I always get concerned about because anyone in the public could hear something that they think would lead to... So, thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Anything else?
Any other questions or comments, Chris? I know you.
Data. So love this. Spent a lot of loving time with this over the weekend as well. As a matter of fact, no one cares, but I do. I categorized all of the total incidences into 4 major buckets and found that there really was no movement at all on 3 of them. All of the movements seem to be focused in buckets where there's some sort of violence, whether it's direct physical violence, violence via language, sexual violence, things of that nature. That was where we went from 10 incidences last year to 3. Everything else was like 6-5, 5-4, 2-2. It was pretty much on par in terms of the types. But I found that really significant. When we think about students, I remember my students going through the middle school, no disrespect meant, but they didn't always feel safe there. And I know that has been a criticism of the schools, in the secondary settings, for some time. So I know that we always hope that a new building will address that. But obviously, I concur. I feel that the schedule has played a major role as well as the staffing. I think it's a real tour de force. So congratulations on that. I thought that was exciting and had to share. Also, out of curiosity, because I immediately drew the connection and then loved the fact that you had a summary, and I'm like, because my first question was, why do you think this is? And you laid it all out there for me, so thank you. Has this been shared with staff, and was it shared with staff prior to them doing this survey?
Great question. The discipline data has been shared in small pockets, faculty council, and my administrative staff. Again, it's going to go to the faculty meeting tomorrow. I just didn't put it out there until I really had this conversation here. So we'll be talking about that, but they know about it because we've talked about it in small pockets. And that discipline data did not go out before the survey.
Stop doing this. I know that, Chris, you're going to share that report with Julie so she can share it with the faculty, the one where you break it all down.
I love it.
Back of the envelope.
So I think it's really important to step back for a second, right? And not only celebrate our kids and our staff and our administration, but really celebrate our kids, our staff and administration. This data point is huge. And I can tell you, as the newbie in town, coming from another community, getting the calls that I was getting last year from Julie and crickets this year. So kudos to our kids, our staff, our administrators, because these are not numbers that are just, we're just throwing numbers out there. This is a collection of raw data that you can look at. But I think it just shows where we're going. So, added to that, what's the research? Scores in academics increase in new buildings 5 years about, on average, nationally from the time that they're built. Here's your second round of scores. You've just been recognized for AP. You've been recognized for MCAS, participation, all of these things. And here's some other local data that's not really collected by someone else showing you that, yes, it's not perfect. You got comments that are, that we continue to look at and comparable. But I think it's really important to address the successes that are happening under the staff, administration, and support from you folks at Stoughton High School. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. We work with kids. They're going to make mistakes. But to just bring the level down of the issues that we were seeing, that I was seeing as somebody that wasn't used to seeing some of that data, I think is kudos to everybody up there.
Can you feel a difference in the culture?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I would encourage you to come and walk the building with me someday. It is, you might not have anything to measure it against, but it feels like the whole temperature has just been turned down. It is peaceful. It is quiet. We don't have, we're always going to have the kids that are making a mistake that are, in the bathroom instead of being in class. But the wandering is down, the fighting is down, the arguing, the loud, insubordinate, really obnoxious sort of behavior is down. It just is very peaceful, very quiet, but wonderful. Yeah.
Sounds like it's conducive to learning.
Yes.
It is. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Julie Miller on this? Again, thank you so much for putting those together. This is really helpful and a lot of food for thought, and I appreciate it, having the good and the bad and kind of, the warts and all, seeing everything laid out like this is really helpful. And curious to see how this goes in the second half of the year.
Thank you.
If it continues. But yes, congratulations on all the hard work.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations. All right, well, take a minute, and we already touched on the transportation update with the bus registration and transportation fees. That's coming next time. The next item on the agenda, going to unfinished business, is to superintendent succession planning. Just a reminder, at our previous meeting on January 28th, Dr. Baeta informed us of his intent to retire at the end of his contract, which runs through June 30th, 2026, and has therefore offered his letter of resignation with the intent to retire at the end of June 30th, 2026. I want to be clear on the dates there. So I did bring that back today. We do need to vote to accept this today, or if not, then need to, and then kind of move on with the next part of the succession planning process. Just a reminder that informing us a year before the end of his contract, Dr. Beta has given us a chance to kind of think about what it means to secure his replacement, what this transition is going to be like, ensure a smooth transition. We do have some options. A nationwide search would take approximately a year, or some districts it takes 2 or even 3 years, and it's the cost to that. The cost I was looking at comparable districts, the total budget for the process would be $30,000, for example. Before hiring Dr. Beta, the school committee underwent 2 searches within 3 years with limited success, if you define success as those superintendents finishing their terms, and noting that the pool of candidates, especially candidates with experience as superintendent or experience with Stoughton similar districts, is limited, and that's been the case for several years now. The other option is to invite a candidate to interview, as we did with Dr. Baeta. We invited him to interview based on his experience and familiarity with Stoughton. At the current time, we have the recommendation of an internal candidate recommended for consideration, and so I would like to turn the discussion over to the working group who put together a packet for us to consider. So.
So, first of all, shout out to Kathy for putting together this whole folder for you all.
Yes.
So, Kathy. Okay, so the superintendent succession working group, which is Chris and I, met to. The problem we were trying to solve that Chris identified at the last meeting was that we have a proposal, we have a recommended candidate, but we didn't really have a clear process for succession planning, and it was sort of, I think what we said last time, sort of joking because it was getting very late, but still accurate. It was sort of succession planning for succession planning, like how do we create a process that can be followed by future committees for future searches, and a way of evaluating candidates based on the job description, so sort of this step between the job description and the resume of sort of this tool, how do we evaluate a candidate and decide whether to advance them? With me so far? Okay. So what we did is, this is the letter, which I'm just kind of walking you all through, is the first thing in the packet is just the letter lays out the process that we followed and the criteria we set forward. So what we set forth was 5, but really 4 criteria for how to evaluate a candidate in the superintendent succession process based on the job description, which is also in your packet. Thank you, Matt, for putting that together. So the first, I said 4, kind of 5 criteria. The first one is just like, does the candidate meet baseline state qualifications, so like licensure, degree, experience in education, and then beyond that got into like the good stuff. So not that that's not good stuff, but you know. So the first thing that we really looked at that we decided was most important is that we want to consider candidates with a proven track record of advancing student outcomes in a public education context, knowing that our students come first and we want to make sure that they're making academic gains here. And in particular, we wanted to address the candidate's ability to address opportunity gaps for historically marginalized groups of students. Second is a candidate who really deeply understands the Stoughton community and student body. So that was really important to us in this process because Stoughton is in the midst of really significant population growth as well as shift. And there's also some like mid-range challenges is how we characterized it in the letter, as in sort of budget needs, like things that are not immediate, but are, they are immediate, but they're also like anticipated to continue for the next couple of years. We've had some budget challenges. There's a lot of academic growth happening recently that is an opportunity to capitalize on. Also some obviously very significant needs with facilities planning in terms of our new elementary school project, beyond that sort of capital planning. So anyway, say all this to say we would really benefit from leadership who's familiar with the situation, familiar with the community, and familiar with the values of Stoughton, sort of the context. So, and this is where we agreed with Dr. Baeta's recommendation that a internal candidate would be the way to go here as opposed to doing the full search. So rank number 3 was a candidate positioned to effectively lead Stoughton Public Schools starting on day 1. So that's where we kind of captured those like leadership qualities. So, for example, has the candidate managed a budget? Have they managed teams, including fostering collaborative work environments? Can they sort of do the leadership pieces? And then the fourth criteria was a candidate who's a collaborator and communicator, able to unite people in service of shared goals. Just knowing that we are going to need somebody who can build relationships within the district, with state and local legislators, with just all of these things that happen at the district level. So, and then we had sort of this, I think, Chris, you called it the wild card category, which is sort of this like, what else feels really important right now? And that was at this moment, well, with the intention of like thinking ahead to future processes. The idea is that this could be populated in different ways depending on the moment the district is in at that time. But based on where we are right now, we put in demonstrated experience with significant facilities projects, including new building projects, would be really important because of what I just talked about, and also significant or demonstrated experience with student academic growth. Again, given some of the things we've touched on. So, and I should say too, I should have led with this too. The idea here is we ranked these in this sequence based on our current moment and the context and the need we have to meet currently. The idea here would be that like a future succession planning process could choose to rank those in a different order depending on what feels important at the time. And that would be their prerogative to do that. But based on where we are now, like, so for example, in the future, maybe it is appropriate to do a world search and put it out there. But Chris, I'm talking a lot. Is there anything you would like to add here? I'm sorry.
No, I let you talk because you like make sense when you talk. So one thing I would like to say is that I think this might be an old version of the document. So we'll get a new version out to you guys. I sent revisions that I don't see reflected here, so I think this might be an old version. Yeah, not huge changes though. I mean, in essence, it's pretty much the same thing. But okay.
You have that one person that's working on your behalf for the entire committee.
Can do. All right. Yeah, I had sent it directly to Lindsay and then
I thought I incorporated
and then sent the email without the attachment and.
Sorry about
that,
Chris.
Like I said, she talks, she makes sense. Me, I'm just a hot mess. One thing I would like to add, we didn't discuss this at the time, but on reflection, another reason why we ranked a candidate with a proven track record of advancing student outcomes in a public education context is, as number one, is because of the growing populations of special education and multi-language learners in our district. And with those growing populations, that's going to require not only just a fiscal shift, a staffing shift, but a shift in priorities and approaches to ensure that we are closing those achievement gaps. We're also still dealing with the ramifications of post-pandemic learning loss. Significant. And I just read this morning that Massachusetts is looking at a half a year of learning loss that they still have not made up yet. And it's even worse for math than it is for English, as you can imagine. But reading, just simply not having that regular exposure to reading has taken a tremendous toll in the elementary school levels. So a leader coming into that context and into Stoughton in that context, I think is really paramount for this particular moment in time. As much as we may want someone with building facilities, and we put that up at number one because of where we are with, you know, our challenges with our school buildings, but I think of all of the challenges this leader will face, this one is really critical to the success of students and the success of Stoughton community going forward. So I did want to offer that. I also want to commend Lindsay, who did like 99% of the work here, where I just went in and took out extra spaces and moved a few words around. But I would like to publicly praise her. She is a wonderful thought partner and just a really great collaborator. So.
Thanks, Chris. I also really enjoyed working with you on this and appreciate
it's a love fest.
The wordsmith, yeah.
Happy Valentine's Day, Lindsay.
Me too. So I think just to bring it back to, I think to add a couple of the other things in the packet behind the actual table of criteria is the superintendent job description, as well as the Stoughton Public Schools vision of the graduate. You won't see that explicitly in here, but we did draw a lot of inspiration from the vision of the graduate and just aligning what we're looking for in a superintendent there. So based on all of that, and sort of looking at this evaluation system and looking at the superintendent's recommendation to advance an internal candidate that you made on January 28th, it would be the succession planning working group's recommendation that we do proceed with our highly qualified internal candidate and invite her to the interview stage using the internal succession process. So the letter also lays out a timeline for that. Speaking of things that we need to change, I think one of these is supposed to be a Tuesday and it's a Monday, but my bad. What we would recommend is this evening we vote to accept the resignation of Dr. Baeta effective June 30th, 2026. We are not letting go of you yet. We are so grateful for the purposes of retirement with congratulations. And then also tonight to vote on and approve this schedule. Optimistically approve the schedule for the selection process. So what that would mean is by next Tuesday, each committee member would submit several questions to the chair for an interview, compile that from the MASC question bank, and then the chair can sort of cross-reference lists, put together something, assign to folks who are interested, and then the working group also would like to put together a couple of challenge scenarios as part of the interview process to really understand the candidate's line of thinking, how you would respond to certain things, how you would react, and really get to see what that would look like in action. So the other thing that is not in here that should be is that we would also vote to authorize the chair to formally invite the candidate to the interview process tonight. And then what we could do is move forward and interview the recommended candidate on February 25th, which would be the Tuesday after vacation week or February break week. And then pending a successful interview and evaluation, there's a timeline for negotiations also laid out in the letter. So that was a lot of talking, so I want to pause and just see if folks have questions or thoughts or comments, and I appreciate the opportunity to work on this. Karen, any questions? No. There's a lot to absorb, I know.
Any questions?
No.
See, that's how we know. That's how we know we were super thorough.
I really do appreciate it. There's a lot of work here. Very thorough.
Like a volleyball.
Is that why we're set up like this?
That's right.
No, I do appreciate this, and I do think, I really appreciate and having this to make, to the thorough work that you've done really makes me feel even more confident that we're moving forward in the correct direction here, and giving our candidate, by moving forward at this time, we give our candidate the time to finish any necessary training beforehand, prepare the entry plan so that everything starts July 1st, 2026 with as few hiccups as possible. So I appreciate this timeline.
Catherine?
Yes.
Two final comments. One is a request. The job description, I'm wondering if we can make it a minimum of 5 years of demonstrated, at least 10 years of experience in the education sector, with a minimum of 5 years if you like. But I was telling Lindsay that I went for my master's after completing approximately 5 years in the education field and was in no way positioned to be a superintendent at that point. I was barely a teacher. So I just wanted to make that recommendation so there's alignment between the criteria and the job description.
That's a good point.
And for the public, I just want to say that it was really important to us that we move forward in a very intentional and thoughtful manner that was in the best interest of the school district. I know that we are concerned about possible implications of nepotism, for example, when we talk about succession planning. Matt and I have had many conversations about growing our own talent and making sure that there is succession planning throughout the district and not just at this level. But we wanted to make sure that we approach this in a way that we had objective criteria that we would be applying to any candidate, and the fact that we have an internal candidate that does meet the criteria, we think it makes sense wants to move forward, at least with the process, and that it's not necessarily a slam dunk. It is still an interview process. But I did want to put that out there for the public that may be watching and may have concerns.
Thank you. All right. Well, we do have 3 items of action that we need to move forward to think about. One is that we need to make a motion to accept Dr. Beda's resignation for the purpose of retiring in June 30th, 2026. I'm going to stress that date again. A motion to approve the calendar that the working group has provided with us, and then a motion to give the authority to the chair to invite the internal candidate for the interview. So those are the 3 motions that we need to move on to the next part of this process.
So I will.
I think if let's just do it one at a time and just make sure we cross our I's or cross our T's and dot our I's. There we go. All right.
So I will move that we, again, with a lot of gratitude and appreciation, accept Dr. Beda's letter of resignation for the purposes of retirement effective June 30th, 2026.
All right.
I made it.
So that motion is made by Lindsay. I do need a second. You're going to vote yes anyways. You don't have much choice.
I am not. That is all you, Armando. Your name all over.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Armando. Thank you for your courage. All right. So we have it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's such a grateful heart.
All right. So thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Listen, thank you. And I'm not going anywhere, and I'm a Stoughton guy, and as I say to all my speeches, once a night, always a night, so I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be around to help the Stoughton School Department any way I can. And you got me for 17 more months, so let's see.
Yes.
We can do a lot.
Yes. I went.
Believe me, there's a lot.
Anything could happen. So. All right. So that is accomplished. Do I need to sign this or just X?
Nope.
Okay. All
Put it
good.
into the minutes.
Okay. Enter into the minutes. All right. And then do I have a motion to approve the recommended, are we calling it calendar or timeline?
Schedule for the selection process, I think, is how
Okay.
I phrased it in the letter. We can go with that.
Let's do that. Schedule for the selection process.
So moved.
All right. All right, so that motion was made by Chris. All right, now you guys come out. All right, so this has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so that's carried 5-0. Again, thank you for your work putting this together. And then the next motion would be to grant the chair the authority to invite the internal candidate for an interview.
So moved.
All right, that was made by Chris, a second. Seconded by Armando. So that's been moved to second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so I will reach out to our internal candidate to schedule an interview. She's going to be very surprised by this, the shock here in the night. So thank you very much. Again, thanks for all the work with this. And that brings us to a slightly less fun topic. Well, not that that was fun. Is the FY26 budget and town meeting articles. Do we want to start with the update from the budget working group? I have some context, I think.
Oh, yeah, do you want to?
Okay. At our last meeting, we voted to include all of our projected Chapter 70 SOA, the Student Opportunity Funds, into our budget. Our previous budget, we had worked with the town to meet the charter required balance budget by December 31st with a 3.8% increase. That was $65,257,429. That fell short of the foundation budget, or net school spending, which is the required minimum spending requirement set by the state. And so we voted to incorporate all of the Chapter 70 aid that we are anticipating for the coming year into our budget, and that new budget that we are seeking with the additional full Chapter 70 funding, SOA funds, is $68,076,863. I will note, even with that budget, we are still looking at cutting 13 positions, and this is the second year in a row that we would be cutting positions in the double digits. So we really are needing to incorporate this Student Opportunity Act money, which is intended for students, and it is intended to address the fact that we have an increasing high needs population, and that population has continued to increase. For that, I'll turn over to the budget working group if you have more to add.
I started talking too early. I apologize. So just a very quick update. So I just wanted to share the process we followed here. In December, our budget working group met with the municipal team and agreed that the schools would receive any funds over the projections for the Student Opportunity Act, because we need those for students, as Catherine just described. So in December, and this is sort of recapping the process again, we put forth a 3.8% increase based on the information we had available at the time, but knowing that we would need to make serious cuts to get there, and that additional SOA funds would be really critical in maintaining level services. So at the last meeting, as Catherine just shared, we voted that new bottom line that incorporated the full Student Opportunity Act projection, because we need it for students and based on our student populations. So just want to put name that the municipal team has expressed some interest in building from foundation, from the state minimum, which would mean revisiting that agreement. And that's not what we have done historically. Our intention, which we did align on with the municipal team here, is to not revote a new bottom line budget at this time and stick with what we voted on January 28th, and to continue to collaborate and continue to communicate through the budget process, but to plan for potential changes. There's a lot there's still things. The big update was House 1 at the state level. There's still things there's more information that will come out over the next couple months. There's also, as we know, rapidly shifting federal context to be aware of that we'll just need to stay nimble, but we'll continue to collaborate to plan as needed. But for now, sticking with that budget voted on January 28th. So just wanted to share that quickly. Dr. Baeta, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of movement, as we know. Just today in the Globe, there's a bunch of different articles taking place around the idea. I have an actual formal request from a working group. I'll share that with you tomorrow. Email that came through MASS that's looking at for further increases in Chapter 70 from what the recommendation currently is. That is being pushed at the state level. So again, I think we'll see what the history has been during my 16 years. Which has been that the Chapter 70 typically goes up. If you recall, it went up last year. It went from the $30, eventually it ended up at the $104, which was exactly the same number as what was used for the shelter students. That multiply that number of the difference plus the 180, we had a little bit over $200,000 in SOA money that we didn't use last year. We didn't go after it. We left it. It's done. We moved on. So I think it's a little bit of a moving target over the next few weeks. I also think that there's a lot of concern about what's happening at the federal USDOE. There's a lot of chatter, as we know. I happen to kind of not listen to chatter. And part of it is we just had to go through that process with the, quote, ISIS coming to the school situation, which I know many of us, it hurt a lot of people. A lot of people are tired of it. A lot of people are full of angst about it, but that's not what's happening. I think it's a lot of stuff that takes place in the background. I think we're going to hear a lot about that. We still don't have a Secretary of Education. I don't think anything's going to move until that happens, and that's probably a few more weeks away. And then lastly, we are a proud community around making sure that our schools are getting what we need as we move forward, and that's a history of it. That's not new, and so I think at the end of the day, we'll all come full circle and we'll be fine.
I think a couple things that might be helpful too for just understanding the context. If I could ask you, Dr. Baeta, to put some numbers together. Like we said, the foundation budget is like the absolute state minimum. The budget we voted in December was 3.8. The state minimum would be about 3.9. Like it would really, we'd be looking at all the cuts we were looking at essentially to make 3.8. So what would be, and that again, that's not something Stoughton has historically done. Stoughton typically, the local contribution comes in higher than that. So Dr. Baeta, I think what would be helpful for just like full context is, could we get a list of communities that do fund at the foundation budget level? I think that would be helpful just to see like, what are those communities? What do we know about them? What percentage over foundation are surrounding towns in our area, as well as what our local versus state contribution has been over time, so we can kind of track that. I think that would just be really interesting, especially with the evolution of SOA funding over the last couple of years and the additional funds from the state.
I think also having in that our own percent over foundation budget. I have a couple of notes from previous years. In FY20, we were at 131%. In FY21, 135%. In FY22, 128%. In FY23, when we allowed $2 million to be used to cover the health insurance crisis in town, we fell to, 117%, and last year we were 118%. And that the rule of thumb that we've heard from MASC, I know Dr. Beta's also echoed this, is that at 120% or higher, that's when you get all the good stuff that Stoughton deserves, that Stoughton wants, the sports, the award-winning marching band program, the theater program, photography studios, foreign language, DECA trips, all the good stuff that we want. That has to be, that comes in 120. Once you fall below 115%, you really struggle to maintain anything beyond the mandates, the lights on, the very basic subjects. And so, yeah, I think having that comparison and showing the town that, our goal had been to build back above 120%, and not being able to use all of our Chapter 70 funding would prevent us from being able to do that.
That goal was articulated at the, in 2022 during the conversation about the healthcare crisis.
Exactly. This is our goal, has been our goal for several years, to get back above 120%, to maintain the programs that Stoughton wants, that Stoughton has told us that they want to keep in our schools, and our students deserve, because they offer them the opportunities they need for future success and for the great opportunities they have now.
Catherine?
Yes.
Am I remembering correctly, when we had our fiscal budget training from MASC in, what was that, November? Didn't they say, we asked them on average what was the overage, and didn't they say it was 38% over foundational budget was the average of what towns contribute to their local schools?
It is, yes. It's in the 30s somewhere, but I can double check with them and get some more information.
And the goal is at minimum, you should be in a community our size with the growth that's happening, and that's the issue here, the growth. And the growth targeted to specialized areas as well is you should be at the minimum of 125 is your goal number. Yeah. And then from there, if you really want to start a, quote, world language, dual language program and all of that, that's your extra above that. Right now, we're not doing that stuff. And the budget that you voted in January is literally to maintain. There's 4 special ed positions that we're adding because of requirements. There's nothing else.
And we're maintaining pre-existing cuts is what we're maintaining.
Correct. Right.
Again, we've cut in the double digits for staff for 2 years in a row. And if heaven forbid, we can't use all of the SOA funding, we are going to have to cut significantly more. We're going to cut into general classrooms. We're going to not be able to maintain the class sizes that Stoughton has long honored. We've really been very lucky to have support from town meeting for years and years to have lower than the state average, lower than what the state recommends for class sizes. And we are inching up. And if we cannot use this SOA funding, all of it, then we're going to be at the point when we can't be able to maintain that. Chris, question or comment?
No, I was just going to observe that we're already seeing, we've already seen some of the impact of last year's budget in the classroom this year.
Right.
And there is concern about the cuts going forward into next year as well, and the impacts it may have in the classroom, especially early age classrooms where that foundational start is an imperative.
Agree. Armando?
I was wondering where can the audience go to express their concern or their support? Is there an email, maybe us, Catherine, they can send it?
Certainly, I would love to hear support, but also Finance Committee, we had huge support last year. A lot of parents came out, students came out, really wonderful students spoke up in front of everybody and in favor of the programs that directly benefit them. The select board, the town manager, certainly, we control the school budget. The select board does not, but certainly worth reaching out to them and saying, hey, the schools need all of the SOA money. The schools need all the money they can get. So town meeting, run for town meeting, become a town meeting rep, speak up at town meeting. Those are all places that you can support, show support for the schools. Ultimately, town meeting members will vote on our budget. We will be going before FinCom. Usually that's the first week of March. The FinCom chair, Finance Committee chair will reach out to the school committee chair to schedule a meeting, and we'll have that meeting then, but certainly lots of opportunities to many people in town you can reach out to support the schools. And we would love to see the parents and the students speak out in support of the schools receiving all the funding and using all the funding. Again, reminder that the SOA, the Student Opportunity Act, is not a grant. It's legislation regarding the calculation of school funding mandated by state law. That becomes the floor each year, so it just keeps building and building. We have seen the Student Opportunity Act was also meant to close the achievement gap between historically disadvantaged and marginalized groups by increasing the amount of money districts spend on educating their students. And we've seen our foundation budget, that requirement, increase $20.5 million since FY22, which is a huge increase. That shows you how much high needs we have, how much population growth we've had. The SOA, the Chapter 70 funding that we've received to offset that is only $14 million. So we really do need all of that money. That money is meant to be spent on student needs, on these high need students, English language learners, special education, low income, all of them. So it really is important that we use that. So we can go all night, but I think we all feel very passionately that this money is for the students and it should be for the students. So the next step is Finance Committee. We'll be arguing for all of our money there, and then to town meeting. Any other comments, questions? Anything else? All right.
This is great. Thank you for laying all of this out.
Yes, I appreciate it. I will happily lay it out. I think I promised I had made a draft of some of this, but I think what we've asked Dr. Beta will be a more comprehensive, but to have the historical evidence of where we've come from and where we're going is going to be really important for us to show people, because all they hear is, oh, you've gotten $14 million in extra money. No, that $14 million is to offset $20.5 million of increased expenses. So an increased spending on students is all for the kids. Yes.
One last thing too is just the state will continue to release information too, so I think we'll just have to continue to respond, right, just based on the new information we have, like we've been doing so far, and continuing to communicate with folks about that. So just want to underline that.
And the state will also track what we're doing with the SOA funds, which is another important piece too, is that we keep, they come back. That Jonathan Ford has all sorts of experience with them coming. They will audit how we spend that. We have to plan for how we spend these funds.
So we just got a notice that we're going to have to generate a required report. There's a training tomorrow and then the next few weeks. So there's absolutely accountability on the SOA funds.
Yes. So it's for students, and they will check. And if not, if we're below foundation budget, if we don't spend it on the proper things, we run fiscal financial penalties, including maybe not getting as much SOA funds in the future. So we need it for the kids. All right, moving on to the next, before we go all night on ranting on the budget. Moving to the redistricting of all K through 5 elementary schools update. Just my regular reminder that redistricting means redrawing the boundary lines for who goes to which elementary school. We're redistricting regardless of the final decision on the South School building due to increased enrollment across the town, and this will affect all elementary schools. As Dr. Baida mentioned, the redistricting committee meets this Thursday, February 13th at 6 p.m., and that is a virtual-only meeting, which is, I was going to be virtual anyway. So a reminder, Chris had asked if anybody had thoughts on what constitutes success. So if you still haven't gotten your thoughts to her, please do that. And I know Dr. Beta has some updates on this.
Yeah, I briefly thank you, Madam Chair, through to the committee and the public. I just wanted to bring the committee up to date on a couple of things that will be discussed Thursday night. And I know because we don't meet for a couple of weeks, I just want to make sure that you folks have this information. So behind me, to my left and to my right, you'll see our modular plans that are a very rough draft of what they are that was given to us with the Gibbons School set at 6 modulars, the Dar at 6, and the Hanson to my left at 4. So the top picture is the actual, if you will, geo picture of the building, the Gibbons School, the Dar, the Hanson. Underneath it is literally the sketch layout marked up of the same building within the added section. So if I may, just to use the Dar, here's the Dar. Here's where you have a little outline showing where the playground is, if you will, the blacktop. Here's the same sketch again with just the added 6 modulars. And then you have here the modulars and what they would look like, and in this case with a canopy-like connection that goes into the school. Same thing here, visual, playground here is being completely taken up at the Gibbons. And again, rendering, and then the 6, and then against the canopy connection. So the canopy would not necessarily be fully enclosed. So that's something that I have a big concern about in terms of weather and safety. But there's other things that are added to that if we in fact enclose, i.e. ADA, and then B, the fire protection. And then the same thing at the Hanson, a little smaller situation. You have the Hanson. So here's your playground, your bigger parking lot, your side lot. So in this particular case, just because of the connection of the building, here's your cutout. Here it is again here, and then here is the 4 classrooms. Now these are 4, 6, and 6 at minimum, because as our enrollment is, as we get closer to having to make decisions, it could be that we need a 5th or an 8 with a 4. Typically these are done with even numbers, just because of the way they're built out. The second thing that I did, and we'll be bringing up, is the timeline and phases. So there's about 4 phases in this process of modular classrooms. They start with design and engineering. That means we need to get funding at town meeting probably no later than this fall. 2, permitting and approval. So that really means that before you permit and approval, you basically have to get the money to do the job, which you'll get from engineering and design. And then job site development and the foundation, depending on what we're doing. And then at the same time, that's when the order goes in for the actual factory construction of the actual modular classrooms. Then those come out, those take approximately 12 weeks, 16 weeks. It really depends on what's going on in the industry. But from installation to full restoration of the site is a minimum of 8 to 20 weeks. So that's the reason why you'd be starting this process no later than this summer. You'd be looking at a fall of 27 opening, more than likely, not 26, just because of the timelines. And remember, you got to go to various town meetings for funding. And then this is a multiple site, and one site that we have not fully discussed yet is the Wilkins, because the Wilkins would not, under this modular, become a Jones Elementary School, if you will. It would not become a preschool. This would be maintained, and the next thing we have to do is we have to take a look at this building and its needs, which would include modulars with 90 kids on a waiting list, and then the Wilkins School would be an elementary school, so that would be looking at modulars as well, especially as we're closing libraries. We could actually bring our libraries back at the same time, and so on and so forth. The other parts of the project that you will need to just keep in your back of your brain is location of water, sewer, and utilities, and the cost connections, access to the location, including crane usage. I can see one of our buildings having an issue with that. Surveillance and alarm systems, sprinkler systems within the modulars, not just excavation and grading, site soil compaction and other specialty areas, i.e., do we need to test anything, which typically you do. Stormwater management system, that's something that people forget. Depending on drainage. Safety and security, is it connected, not connected? How are we going to deal with that? Traffic plan, more people going to a school, regardless if it's more buses or, and then recess and outdoor learning spaces. All would have to be part of this comprehensive plan. So you're looking at the fall request to town meeting, this fall of design and engineering. That would begin right away, and then school committee filing a request for the annual town meeting for 26, and then beginning the process in the summer of 26, going into 27. Again, permitting takes quite a while, especially that this could be either 4 or even 5 sites.
Just to clarify, this is if the ballot question on
This
April
is-
8th fails.
This is moving towards your modulars because of the April 8th vote goes down.
If the April 8th election or ballot proposal fails, the South School will close, and this is what will happen,
Right.
just to draw that line.
And the reason, thank you for the clarification, it's important. The reason for that is we're at that 1/3 valuation issue where anything that we do to the South School automatically kicks in all kinds of other changes, ADA compliance, sprinkler systems, so on. I don't think that spending millions upon millions of dollars at the South School by cutting back even further classrooms, because that whole front end of that building is problematic, is fiscally responsible, to be quite honest. I've also provided the committee, and we'll work with the building committee with two things. Number one, just a general breakdown of what the district looks like, and that's up here as well. I feel like Vanna White tonight. A little different looking, but you have your DAW, if you will, the Hanson, Gibbons, and then you're coming down into the southern part of town. So I just want to briefly just try to, again, within the modular concept of this only, not redistricting with, what you're doing is you're taking literally this entire side of town, you're taking this entire side of town, and you're taking every student that's here, and in some way, with redistricting, everybody's going to be moving. You have more moves taking place with modular classroom than you knew with the new South School. It's just a fact of numbers, because you're moving over 100 kids to the DAW, over 100 kids to the Gibbons, over at least another close to probably 80 kids. And then that's why we have to talk about the Wilkins, because we can't put more than 100 kids or so at each of the other two schools. Why? Cafeteria space, kitchen space, gymnasium space, parking lot spaces. Remember, we're going to be shifting all these people to these schools, so parking lots does become part of consideration. Second part is the 22-23 heat map. This was done with through DRA, so this is already a little old. We would be getting update with this as a redistricting committee. We'd have to. But what you will see here, and just for the audience sake, is that our Wilkins area here, going slightly south to the Gibbons, and then deep into this area here in the south, is a concentration of where the red zones are. So again, you've got that Wilkins area, just slightly southeast of that, then you're coming down into the Gibbons area, and then way down in what I would call this deep eastern line.
Deep south.
Deep south. Deep south of the south, or the south. Not really deep south. But my point is that by having to close the south because of modular, you're shifting a lot more kids. You just are. And it's let's just say it's good for 20 years. We're building again. We're back to building elementary schools, which I think is not in the best interest. So I wanted to put that out there for information only, because I think that there's a lot of perspectives that the impact on the modulars might not be an impact. There's a number of impacts: long-term fiscal constraints, or fiscal issues, educational issues, everything like I just said, safety issues. People have to understand, when you move 100 more kids into a building that's only made for 400, and you put modulars outside of them, you have lunch problems, recess problems, traffic flow problems, because and by the way, our budget will increase in transportation. It just will. It's that simple. So I wanted to provide the committee kind of like that 10,000 piece of information, which will be shared again on the virtual meeting with the redistricting committee. On the other side of that, we're going to be doing the same thing. We just have more time with the new building, right? Because if the new building passes, now this redistricting committee can slow its work down. We really don't have to start doing anything until, to be quite honest, at the earliest, January of 26, because the building wouldn't be opening until the fall of 28. So you have a lot more time to be able to do that as well. And as you know, you have an article at town meeting for that purpose of the one time looking at redistricting the district, but potentially two projects. It'll be interesting to see. In this case, it's one project because we're waiting until April, because hopefully we can save some money. So that's where we're at as of tonight. Just simple information, I'm sure this will cause some other questions, but it's important for people to know that the redistricting committee is already beginning its work for the purposes of collecting data and information, and that the impact, the way we're going to be talking about it, is that if this heat zone is close to accurate, which we believe it is, based upon what we've been seeing with the enrollment numbers at all the schools, we have some issues with going to the modular classrooms.
Chris, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Baeta. I just thinking back to Ms. Miller's presentation earlier, and thinking about the ancillary impacts that might happen because of the increase in transitions, the increase in crowding in lunches, and, you know, kind of the common areas, and how that's going to impact the school climate at all of these schools, and it's going to impact behavior and discipline issues at all of these schools. So that's something, you know, so it's not just the downgrade in the learning, but it's going to have a lot of other impacts on the students and the staff.
You'll also increase your administration by at least 3 assistant principals, because there's no way you're adding 100 more kids to a building, making it a bigger building than it already is, and having one person in charge of now over 500 kids in some cases, and 100 staff. It's one of the biggest concerns I have literally is the lack of understanding of which part of what I have to do is educate, which is moving 100 kids, whoever those 100 kids are going to be, from whatever building into another building. Also means we're not choosing if we're in modulars, and we're not taking, I'm not going to be sending out notices to parents, would you like to be in the modulars or in the building? That's not happening either, right? Drop-offs, which are already pretty congested, especially at the Dar Elementary School. Very congested, is a concern. So these are all things that come into play that people, as they're looking at what do we do for the future, one has a future, the other one has a Band-Aid.
Can I make 2 requests? One is that I think this is really helpful information that town meeting members might want as they try and think about how they want to move forward with a vote, and then the community itself when we have the election. This I think would be very helpful information. Secondly, can you include that staffing information when we start talking about the cost of a no vote and the cost of modulars, because I think that's also really critical information.
And I would add the transportation cost too. It's hard to budget without actually doing but just thinking how much more buses would this mean? And
one big concern around the transportation is exactly what you just said. What we see in the heat map is we're down here.
yeah.
Right, so our closest is the Gibbons, which automatically is going to cause a ripple effect. So because the Jones at one point was right here, so if this was still just a typical school, it's not. There's no way you could ever open it as such. That would be different, but that's a big cause of concern is transportation costs, especially within anything to do with a half a mile, quarter of a mile transportation. I mean, you're looking at the potential that, again, shifting bodies, it's going to lead to more busing. There's no doubt about that.
And if we have to provide students who live 2 or more miles, who are in K through 6, free transportation, having bus fees is not going to solve that, because we are going to increase drastically the number of students who live 2 miles from their schools. I thought the same thing with that Chris did, thinking back, like the discipline issues are just going to skyrocket, and at that age, with the kids who have transition issues already, just because they're young and they're new to schools, but the neighborhood impacts of thinking about the Gibbons, the Daw, even the Hanson, and the Wilkins, they're in the middle of neighborhoods, that much more traffic through those neighborhood streets. I don't know that I don't think that the neighborhoods are going to appreciate having just double, triple parked people and not being able to get out of their houses.
And if you look at the heat map with the new school in it, because you'll see that that's a dot on there as well, it's a different dynamic of change in terms of the number of and one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how many students are way down in that south area and then way in that northern area, because those are going to be the two extremes that are going to shift in some way. Because you're no longer shifting and including South Stoughton, you're shifting excluding South Stoughton. That's the difference. In the new building, you're still including South School, and there'll be shifts. But in the modular redistricting, you're literally taking an entire side of town and moving it, which then causes other sides of town to move as well. It's just a bigger move.
Yeah, on an engineering's perspective, as the number of components increases, so will the number of problems and cost.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of additional components.
Yeah, you do not have in Massachusetts a lot of districts that are looking at modulars for 3, 4, or 5 buildings. Believe me, I've been digging. It's, they take one building, and because of enrollment increases, 6 new classrooms in one are added, and that's it. It's that one building, kind of like we did at OMS in the late 90s. Added those modulars there. So, and again, those were also the savings on that project, because I was sitting in your seat at the time. The savings on that project was to then enclose it in brick, which has literally led in Massachusetts, I think, with the winters that we have, to holding those spaces to be reasonable, although we are having significant internal challenges with heating systems and ventilation systems because of the age of the building.
All right, any more questions or comments? Mr. Gonzalez?
I just want to add about the modulars at the middle school, having been at a school principal at a building with modulars, and the modulars, they do the trick to house bodies, but they are subpar. It's a suboptimal decision. You have a separate heating system, a separate plumbing for the bathroom and septic, and if the heat doesn't work there, and so it's obviously a solution that districts have to do, and this one did it in the mid-90s in OMS, and this is a consideration, unfortunately, I have to talk about. But just as a principal who ran a building with modulars for 11 years, just wanted to highlight how it's also a decision to do something that is suboptimal. It is a less than decision educationally, period. So.
It's quite the trip to go to lunch, Jim, and to the school nurse at the front office. It's literally, you feel, I just did a visit to one of my colleagues, I won't say which district, but with we were exchanging ideas on something else, so I went down there and saw it. It feels like you're separated.
Yeah.
It feels like you're separated. And by the way, that separation has to be a certain amount because of fire protection. Trucks still have to be able to get close to the building, to the regular building, not just the mine. So it's not a plan that I think Stoughton should consider, but we'll do what we need to do.
That leads us on to our next topic, which is the South Elementary School building needs update. The special town meeting on February 3rd overwhelmingly passed the updated debt exclusion article for the elementary school building project with a vote of 110 to 28. So thank you to town meeting members for their continued support of this project. I don't know if we calculated, but we may have actually gained a few points of support this time around. Thank you very much to the petitioners who brought this article forward to begin with, and to the select board and town manager, the building committee, everyone who worked forward to bring this forward. So really thank you for this next chance. The next step is the townwide elections on Tuesday, April 8th, 2025, where the debt exclusion will be on the regular town election ballot. That's not a special election this time. Please see the town clerk's website for important information information on deadlines for voter registration and applications for mail-in ballots. Yes.
I just want to, on that same note, I want to publicly thank the town manager, Tom Coulter, and Joe McCrisky, who are actually leading presentations with senior citizens and the potential for how to have some type of a financial support on a project like this. They're doing it at a number of different sites, both during the day and in the evening. It's just been published on Facebook. So just a shout out that they're supporting the project by doing that extra.
The building
I'm
committee
sorry,
meets.
just,
Good. Yes.
I'm sorry, who was doing that? Who was
The town manager and Joe McCrisky.
Who's Joe McCrisky?
He's a
the-
select board member.
He's a select board member, and he's going around to,
Yeah,
where is he going?
So they're doing one, I believe it's Council on Aging, I think the library. They're doing presentations on senior financial opportunities within the state government and local government when you have something like a debt exclusion. So there's something out there called the Senior Circuit Breaker where you can actually apply based on income and so on and get a quote reimbursement. That type
That's
of stuff.
awesome. Good guy. All right, thank you.
The building committee meets tomorrow, Wednesday, February 12th at 7 p.m. Is that hybrid or virtual only?
That is hybrid.
Hybrid,
Pretty
okay.
sure, yeah.
So the in-person portion will be here at the conference room at the district offices at 31 Pierce Street in Stoughton. There's a virtual link as well. Again, I'd like to thank our communications director for putting together the calendar of all the upcoming PTO, PTA, school councils, school fair dates, all the other events, the town events. And we will probably be asking if anybody's interested in helping out, standing out at the table, asked to speak about the project. I'm working with him as well, talking about maybe doing a Q&A session at the library that we could have SMAC record. That's been proposed as well. Maybe any other potential segments or community forums, making sure those are recorded for SMAC and then post them on our website as well. And personally, I've started reaching out to some local groups, some parents clubs, just a couple civic groups, looking at talking to maybe some churches and synagogues about doing presentations as well. I know that the roadshow is also underway, planning for that with the building committee. So if you want to come listen to me ramble on about the project, I will try to be brief. Reach out to me via my email. The school committee email is k_weiss@stoughtonschools.org. One of the lessons that I think we really learned from the community forums is that we need to meet people where they are already gathered. So if we can get 15, 20 minutes, half an hour of their time while they're already gathered for their meeting, for their, is it a PTO meeting? Is it a school fair where they are? Can we grab 2 minutes of their time and hand them some information? Coffee clutches, if people want me to invite me to come while they have their monthly coffee clutch and talk about the building project, ask me questions, I'm happy to do that as well. But we just have much better attendance if we go to where they are already. And it's really important that we just get the word out. There was that change in the date. The election date, again, is April 8th, and Tuesday. Any other questions or comments about the building committee? The budget? Yes, Chris.
Just wanted to clarify, when exactly is the redistricting building committee meeting? And when exactly is the South Elementary School building committee meeting?
That is a good point. So the South Elementary School, the new elementary school, whichever you call it, the elementary school building project. So that's the actual physical building. That meeting is tomorrow, Wednesday, February 12th at 7 p.m. And then the redistricting committee, which is going to take place whether we do the new building or the modulars, hopefully it's the new building, is the Thursday at 6 p.m., Thursday, February 13th at 6 p.m. So lots of meetings this week. I am very busy. My calendar is full. Yes. But I still have time. If you want to have me talk to you this week, I can find time for you. For going on to the policy review, I would like to invite the policy working group to present their 3 policies. We've sort of already introduced the first one, but feel free to give us a little more information. So, Chris and Karen.
Thank you. So we have 3 policies for your consideration tonight. I'd like to take them out of order, if that's okay, starting with policy IGA/IGD. This is the easiest policy simply because it is two different policies that were simply put together. And you'll notice that the version that you have tonight has two different colors, so you can see distinctly the one policy and then the other policy. The wording is identical to what the original policies were. It was just that they're related, and it made sense for them to live in the same place. Karen, anything you'd like to add to the IGA, IGD?
No, that was an easy one. The exact same policies, it just put in one instead of two.
I noticed the MASC seems to be doing the consolidation of policies. That it just seems to be like.
Yeah, that's a trend we're seeing. It seems like they're trying to clean up a lot of things.
Yeah. So.
Any questions?
Excellent. So EEA, we have already hit upon. What we did was we separated out of this all of the information that was more around the guidelines of, using the bus, how to register for the buses, the fees for the buses, who's eligible for buses, all of that. None of that is really policy. That's all guidelines and really is determined by the central office. So what we separated out here, and once again, this goes along with the guidelines that were put out by MASC, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, I believe, was everything related to state law and regulation regarding procurement of bus transportation services. So that's what this is. But we still wanted to make sure that in case folks on a Wednesday evening when they're just rifling through the school committee policies, in case they're curious what those guidelines are, we made sure that the document, which will be developed or is in development right now, will be linked at the bottom of this policy. It says that the guidelines will be reviewed and approved by the school committee. So you received a copy of them tonight, thanks to Jonathan. So if you can review that at your leisure and provide any feedback back to him, so that we can move this from discussion to, I believe, an actual vote next meeting. That would probably be preferred. Jonathan, you want to weigh in on that?
I mean, you have the option either way.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
And I think it's important to point out, because you had mentioned the adoption of the guidelines, the idea is the initial piece of the guideline, the initial set of guidelines, which would be removing all the process piece from the past policy, would be subject to approval of the committee in conjunction with this policy. But moving forward, it would fall under the superintendent to make periodic updates without having to come back to the committee. So although we're establishing the baseline set of guidelines, it would then be a component that the superintendent would take care of.
And then one thing that Karen and I determined, having already given this to you, is we would like to add the words to the very last sentence of this policy. It says the committee wishes to be informed of all new guidelines. So to Jonathan's point, if there are new guidelines, we should be informed. And we would like to add after that, and must approve substantive revisions to these guidelines. So if there is a major shift, for example, in who is eligible for bus transportation, fees, conduct that will, mean that they will not be allowed to take the bus anymore, and any, major changes, not minor tweaks, that we should approve them.
And what we did also, when we set you the draft guidelines, we actually bolded out in red the areas that most likely would cause this to come back to the committee, which would be a change in fees or a change in the threshold distance at which students qualify for service.
Yeah.
So in our mind, I mean, those were the big ticket items that would automatically bring it back to the committee.
Karen, any thoughts, or did you want to speak to the last sentence and the revision that we're requesting to what they have in front of them?
Yeah, so if we want to move into discussion, I think last week it was an informational, this week discussion, and next week would be vote. So I don't know if you want to move into discussion with all three, if you want to do one at a time. If you wanted to continue to do IKF, and then we can move to discussion on all three policies.
Any preferences?
I'm fine just presenting them all and then.
Okay. All right, cool. Second. All in favor? All right, so the final policy, Stoughton Public Schools, the policy IKF, graduation requirements. You have in red the changes from the pre-existing policy that we wanted to make, and this is in response to, I believe, the MCAS determination for graduation, really. And it just simply, so all of the graduation requirements are laid out in the handbook and the program of studies, which I call the course catalog. And so that if there are any changes, because those are determined by the building administrator and the school council in collaboration, that they can't just sneak that by, that we would need to be informed of that.
And if I could just add, this is just consistent with our current policy for handbooks, whereas the school committee doesn't approve handbooks, but you do approve changes in the handbooks that fall under school committee policy. So this is just an extension of that piece, explicitly talking about graduation requirements.
And the
Few words on this page.
Yeah, and the one thing we would like to note is we're considering a change of the title for this. We found it confusing because the MASC policy that is IKF actually does list out graduation requirements, meaning 4 years of English, so many years of math, et cetera, the Mass Core, as recommended policy for school committees and districts to consider, which obviously we have a different process in place because of local control. So the fact that it's also titled graduation requirements but doesn't actually speak to the graduation requirements, I found confusing. So I thought we might want to, when we get to discussion, we can talk about, what we might want to call this policy. So. Any additions, Karen? Okay. Superintendent, you look like you had a comment.
Just that the graduation situation is going to be a moving part, as per the governor having basically a committee, if you will, that's going to be advising her on changes by December and of this year. But also that the latest on the graduation situation for those students that have already left Stoughton High School with a certificate of attainment, but not a high school diploma, that they can file for their high school diploma. We can review if they've met the most recent school committee approved guidelines, which for us is the making sure that they've taken the test. Right, and then 3, they would be considered graduates of the class of 2025. It's not going backwards to their year that they actually left. They would be considered class of 2025 students.
All right, well, I will open up for discussion. Any questions, comments about these 3 policies, suggestions for name titles? Maybe do we do graduation requirement approval? Just,
I have a question.
sure.
This is comment about potentially changing the name. I'm just wondering, I don't know, if it's IKF, does it get attached to that name?
It's our policy book.
So we can change
Although we use
IKF?
the MASC model, we can do with it as we please.
Okay.
Good question.
Yes. Any? No?
Okay, so you wanted to do them one at a time? Or you want to open up all 3 for discussion?
I think I would just open it with all 3 for discussion.
Okay, so I don't know if you wanted to talk about the IKF, because you wanted to change that part. For me, it was EEA, and it was definitely at the very bottom, just before all the legal references. And so that last sentence, it starts, like Chris was saying, the committee wishes to be informed of all new guidelines, so the guidelines that's on the superintendent, and must approve of substantive revisions to these guidelines. So I would like that wording in there. John has pointed out that we already have that authority to approve substantive revisions. I just want the wording in. Just because. So that was the only addition for me for these three policies.
The superintendent has no issue as it comes to that. I think anytime transportation can be given to the school committee to decide, I'm happy with. All yours. All yours. Yeah. Not a hill I'm dying on.
I think it's helpful to remember that the policy is a reference for families. As much as I read it fairly regularly, that families can use it as a reference. And so it is helpful for them to know where to go if they say, hey, who do I talk to about the fact that this policy gives preference to this sort of student, or, about the fees. And I think that gives them some direction, because it's not always obvious. Not everybody speaks policy speak. So.
I have to say that this was probably, out of all of them, this was our best. And I think this was administrative recommendation for us to please change this. So this was actually an excellent recommendation, so I appreciate the administration bringing it up.
If there are no further, if you do have any questions or comments that come up between now and then, send them to Jonathan Ford, and we will vote on these next time. Still have time to discuss them if you have any things, but it looks like, thank you very much for the work. Chris, you had more comment?
Well, no, just still very interested in any thoughts the school committee might have around a title for policy IKF, which is a rip-roaring title, I must say. Graduation requirement change approval process sounds so bureaucratic, but it's accurate. But Lindsay, I know you're a really good wordsmith. I didn't know if maybe you had some thoughts.
I think Catherine made a suggestion, but I think it got lost in the flurry.
Yeah.
I just had approval, but
Yeah.
Graduation requirement approval.
Graduation requirement approval.
Okay, done.
yeah. We can sit on it.
Okay.
You don't have to take my suggestion.
All right, and then my other final question, point of order, Jonathan, can we also move to vote on any policies? Like, can we vote on IGA, IGD, since?
So if there's nothing here where there's anything contested or if everybody agrees with what these changes are, you can just vote them tonight.
Yeah, I'm open to
All three. And just vote them, the policies as amended. And I'll make the adjustments and send them to you for review, then send them up to MASC.
You good with that? Yep.
Yeah, if you.
So if I have it right, IGA, IGD were no changes. And then for IKF, and I've lost my own IKF, you want to make that, do we need to make the motion to change, or just
So vote the change as
discussion?
amended.
As amended.
Just vote as
Okay,
amended.
and that was going to be graduation.
Requirement approval.
Okay, graduation requirement approval. And then for EEA, that was going to be changing that last sentence to add in the words "must approve."
Done. So
It's in all agreement?
I'll update the policies. I'll send them to MASC tomorrow, and I'll CC both of you to ensure the fact the language is what we're looking for.
Okay, so we need to vote?
Yes, so do I have a motion to approve EEA as amended, IGA/IGD, and IKF as amended?
So moved.
All right, motion is made by Lindsay. A second?
Second.
All right, second by Chris. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that's carried 5-0. Well, that's one less thing to do next week. Thank you very much for your work, policy working group. And just a couple more things. I know I've kept you very long tonight. Acceptance of minutes, January 28th, 2025. At this time, I'd like to ask for any amendments.
Yep.
All right. I will not cut Chris off this time. So Chris, would you like to start?
It still hurts. Yeah, so at the bottom of page 2, when we're talking about the 2025-2026 school calendar approval, all the way at the bottom, it said option 1 and 2 are the preferred formats. I thought that was option 2 and 3.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And it's also, I'm sorry,
Yeah, go for it.
it's also feedback received, students, it wasn't just students, it was also parents that
Yeah.
we surveyed.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was one that I caught. Okay, and then on page 4, under B, FY26 budget and town articles, number 2, the Parliament preliminary numbers for foundational budget, Chapter 74 aid. First of all, just wanted to shout out that we / our fabulous transcription wizard spelled out Student Opportunity Act before putting in the initials and referencing the initials. Love that. I always like to point that stuff out. About 2/3 of the way down that paragraph, there's a sentence that begins, "The state's foundation budget for Stoughton." I would like to define foundation budget for people who are referencing.
I think the definition we've been using is the required minimum spend.
Set
The
by the
minimum
state.
spending requirement set by the state.
So the minimum spending requirement set by the state. So I just wanted to include that because I want the minutes to be as clear and helpful as possible. And it is, the second to the last sentence in that paragraph kind of references it. There are financial penalties if towns go below the required net school spending. I can't talk anymore. And I wondered if maybe in parentheses we put AKA foundational budget, just so we're not, so folks know that we're talking about the same thing there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just put parentheses for foundation budget. And just a note to our recording secretary, the foundation budget is technically capitalized.
Yes, thank you.
I don't always do.
And recording secretary, another big smiley face at the bottom of that page. Redistricting means redrawing the boundary lines. Thank you. Love that.
I actually have used her summary because I think she summarizes it so well without my
that.
rambling. So.
On page 5, under elementary school building committee, in the second to last sentence, the one that begins, if approved at special town meeting, it, can we define what it is?
That would be the debt exclusion vote.
Yes.
Let's replace it with a 300 student school as number 1.
Oh, no, but it would actually be on the election ballot, would be the debt exclusion vote for the...
So I think it would be helpful to spell that out, and that is it for my edits. Thank you. I yield the floor.
All right. Any other amendments to the minutes? Chris caught the one that
I move that we approve the January 28th, 2025 regular school committee meeting minutes as amended.
All right, that was, motion was made by Lindsay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll give it to Armando. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so that's carried 4-0 with Karen abstaining because she was absent.
Fun units last time.
It's always the barrel of monkeys around.
All right.
Your party was over. You probably could have swung by to catch the second half of the meeting.
All right, the next item on the, we're so close. The Stoughton Equal Opportunity Committee, SEOC, I know, expansion proposal. Select Board member Deborah Roberts has sent us the revised bylaw. This is what's going to appear in the town meeting warrant. And then she also sent along the PowerPoint that she will be using to present this proposal at the annual town meeting. She would appreciate a vote of support from the school committee if we feel so moved. She is still looking for a volunteer to co-present this with her. If anybody would love to jump up and do that, or just keep it in mind. But tonight, the main issue is looking for, if you feel comfortable, if not, we can bring it back next meeting and look at this. But this is what's going to move forward for town meeting.
I do have a question on
Sure.
this. I think I'm
No, go
missed
ahead.
a lot of the discussion on this. Is this already a committee?
Yes, so it is an existing committee. Right now, it only serves the town side. And there are kind of two goals of this proposal. One is to expand it to include the schools more formally. I talked a little bit to her about the process, and she said that's still up for discussion, exactly what this might entail, how the process would work. But she's laid out the bylaws for this. The other is to sort of memorialize this and enshrine this in the town charter, so it would be actually a committee that can't be just cut at a whim. As we've seen, things getting cut at whims. But those are the two of the goals for this, really.
Okay, and is this going to have a financial impact?
That's a good question.
There is a recommendation under the, through you, Madam Chair, to Karen, there is a recommendation on action plan where it does note item 5, in collaboration with the superintendent and town manager, create an annual program, plan, and budget for the SEOC. What that means, I guess, would be that committee would put something together that's a working document. I think we just recently saw that from one of our other committees from town meeting, where they were going after a grant, but that didn't work out, and we ended up, I think town meeting last fall ended up, or last spring ended up funding it. So whatever funding happens, it's going to have to go through a process. So, but there is, I think, long-term, the intentions of funding the budget.
Okay, and as I sit here and try to find my paperwork from it, was there a name change on it?
No.
Yes.
No.
It used to be called, the DEI Advisory Committee?
Right. So that is a
Okay, so it
previous
wasn't a name
incarnation.
change. Or was that disbanded? Chris, you were a member of that, correct?
Yeah, I
Was that disbanded and now
was
this a
way
new
before my
one?
time. The SEOC is the committee I was appointed to several
So
years
is it
ago.
the same thing from 2022?
It's been changed, I believe. I wasn't here in 2022, so I can't speak to the date, but that's what this says. That, I mean, it seems like something was done in 2022.
Okay.
So I'm going to guess
They
maybe
attended the remap training.
in 2022. Okay, so that's, okay.
So are you no longer on it?
I'm not
'Cause
on
I
it.
thought, right, I thought it said it didn't want elected officials. So, and I noticed there was a whole bunch of elected officials that are listed on, there's like 4 elected officials that are currently on the board,
Right.
on their board, so I guess they would need all new board members?
They're
Is
talking
that what
about
they're doing?
it from the community.
Yes.
Where the
Yeah.
school committee would appoint so many community members, and then the
Correct.
town would appoint
All right.
community members.
Yeah, so these would be community members. The idea that would be, and people invested in the schools, so staff, families, and to speak on the school's behalf.
Okay, so is this still, I know I'm asking you.
No, let's go. If I have questions, I can
Okay.
go ask.
So it was called the DEI, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee. And now it is called the Stoughton Equal Opportunity Committee. And I noticed that there was definitely some language that was removed from the original, even the original that we got, that some things were taken out. And is there any reason why?
I had a document that had the track. Did I not send that? I may not have sent that. Okay. There were suggested revisions. Some of it was a recognition that it was overly long, but there were also some recommendations regarding a productive way to move this forward without it getting caught up in, and people getting hung up. When she presented this to the select board, people got hung up on specific phrases and specific language. And her goal is really to work towards the intent of inclusion, belonging, diversity, et cetera, rather than having people focus on that. Chris, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, DEI has become highly politicized language. I know I was one of the people who recommended that she take that language out because I found that it would probably be divisive. particularly in town meeting, but also in the community, which is the antithesis of its intent.
Okay, and is she looking to include gender, or is she, because I know that a lot of it was around race when she initially did it, and she still has that written in providing evidence of systemic racism in Stoughton and to combat racism. So is this not like a total inclusion of DEI? Is this more kind of, is it a more focused? I don't know what the focus is of this.
That's a good question. I think when she took some of the language out, it's a little bit uneven. Some of the intent was to also address broader issues, age, disability.
But nothing on gender, which I was surprised.
Yes,
because women have been the largest benefactors of DEI. And yet I don't see it in here, and I just wasn't sure if it was because she didn't want to because it's not the scope that she's looking for, or if it's just that it was an oversight on her part, because I didn't see it on either one, so I wasn't sure.
It's a great question. I had the same question.
Yeah, that's one I can certainly carry back to her and ask for more information on which groups.
I would definitely be concerned.
Okay.
I'd like to know that. And then she also mentioned that part of the duties will be providing training for committee members to self-examine and recognize their own experience. So I'm not sure if she has in there who will be providing, like, will it be the committee members that are providing training, or are they providing training to us committee members?
I had that same question too.
Or are they going to hire and use some of the money that I think Dr. Baeta was saying they were looking for to hire outside experts to do? I just have a lot of questions on what. I mean, it sounds quite lovely, really. It's always great. We have a very diverse community here in Stoughton, and it's always good when that's represented in all levels of our government. So I would love actually to see more. I love to see more community involved in this stuff. I just have a lot of questions as to where, like on one of them, is it still under duties? It's still under duties.
There are a lot of duties, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of duties. But I mean, for, this could be like so much fun for some people. So it says periodically and no less frequently than once every 6 months, the SEOC shall brief the school committee on any events, campaigns, or programming that the SEOC is facilitating, and on any equal opportunity-related data, accounts of experience, or issues relevant to Stoughton Public Schools that the Equal Opportunity has uncovered. So they're going to be looking to possibly uncover equal opportunity issues in the Stoughton public school system?
I asked her.
I know I kind of turned that around a little bit, but that's kind of how it read to me, and I'm just wondering how they're going to, are they looking to come into the schools and evaluate? I know that we have methods and things in place that we have to, please don't save me on this one. I know we have these things in place that we have to follow.
Well, we're required by law in terms of certain things, but I think, and I may be wrong, Madam Chair, on this, but I think that what we have going here is that this Chapter 44 was something else and is now changed to this. And when you look at the PowerPoint and you look at the actual bylaw, they kind of don't line up. And I'll just say purpose and mission. So Stoughton registers commercial and institutional entities and other stakeholders of diverse cultural, religious, socioeconomic, racial, and ethnic and experiential backgrounds. And so you would say to the effect, well, where's gender as an example? So when you go to the actual PowerPoint, the purpose reads, The primary objective is to increase cooperation, understanding, and dialogue among Stoughtonians of diverse backgrounds. The SEOC will welcome and promote inclusion throughout the town for anyone who lives, works, learns, prays, or plays in Stoughton. That just sounds like two different things to me.
Right.
I may be wrong. I don't have the history here, but it seems like the bylaw used to be something else, and it's being changed. And then what I see in the agenda and the purpose, like that purpose sounds very different. The next one, the mission, value diversity, simple. Foster a community where everyone has an equal voice in their government, simple. Where all people can thrive, where they live, work, and play. Very concrete, simple. But that's not what the bylaw gets into a lot more details. So that's why I was suggesting that it just, there seemed to be a disconnect between bylaw and what I was reading in the PowerPoint, and I'm not blaming anybody for that. I haven't been here for it. I in general support anything that has to do with us being a better community. I wonder if maybe some more hands that could go on this would be, and I'll give you an example, having HR on the town side and HR on the school side kind of look at this stuff might be of interest, because Stoughton Equal Opportunity Committee is very much also sounds like, equal opportunity employment.
Yeah.
Where we're looking to be a diverse community of workers and so on and so forth. Again, I'm not against it. I'm just simply saying that there seems to be a disconnect.
And its initial incarnation, after the name change, when it was focusing on the town side, that was fundamentally the key role it was playing, not the sole activities. They were still planning diversity events and awareness raising, but the goal really was kind of playing that EEO support advisory committee to augment the town's goals around diversity and equity in terms of their staff, if I am summarizing that correctly.
I kind of think it talks about the role of town government.
Right.
So I think it's looking to see, what are the programs and protocols that we have in place to make sure that we are within the workforce equal or somewhat equal to what our actual living population looks like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, which is, very different between our student population and our overall town.
Right.
As one example.
Yeah. Karen, did you have more questions or comments? Or
Yeah, I'm not going to go into them all tonight.
You can email them to me, and I can bring
Sure.
it to her. I just say,
I just find it overall confusing. I'm
It is
just
a little
not
bit
really sure
confusing.
what they're looking for.
Right, and I looked at what the SEOC is currently doing, and they're involving students designing a bench for Halloran Park that says "All are welcome here," and there's a big difference from that to telling the schools about opportunities for, employment or something like that. And I also had questions for Select Board Member Roberts about, if some of these suggestions involve funding, those have to be tied to the budget cycle. Like, you can't come to us in September and say, hey, we found this great professional development program on this, when our budget's already set. And we're looking at years from forward. So, okay, yeah, feel free, if anybody else has feedback, I can bring it to her. I believe this has already been submitted to the town meeting warrant, but certainly we can get clarification. I don't know that the PowerPoint is set. If the PowerPoint is really disconnected, then that, perhaps that'd be one way to kind of reconcile the difference. But I am happy to take more questions and suggestions for her.
I think, one of the major challenges is I just didn't have a chance to sit with it before it was due back to her. We had a family emergency, and I work, and it was like a 24-hour, maybe a 36-hour window from the close of this 10 p.m. meeting to when this was due back, so I didn't have a chance to really sit with it again until this past weekend, unfortunately. So I do have feedback and recommendations for her, and I'm happy to sit down with Deborah Roberts about this. I mean, my recommendation, but if the bylaw's already been submitted, I don't know if it's possible to do a substitute motion. I've seen that at town meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, I would recommend boiling this down to 5 bullets for the duties, and I think that the current SEOC members really need to think about their logic model, their theory of change. What is the future state they would love to see in Stoughton? What is the committee's role in that? And then what are the resources they need? What are the activities they're going to do to achieve that future state? Is it really around creating more diversity-focused awareness-building campaigns? Is it more looking at data and making more data-informed decisions that move or close equity gaps in the community? Is it to ensure representation in our staff to reflect the population? But it can't be all of these things, especially not initially. But I feel the focus right now is broad, which is one of the reasons why I think it's really confusing. But I think the clearer the focus, the more achievable it will seem, the more likely it will garner support, and people will line up to want to participate on the committee.
I agree.
I'll send my comments both to you and to Deborah.
Okay.
I'll probably just take a picture of this and snap it as a PDF or something.
Sounds good. Yes. All right. So again, happy to take, and Karen, if you want to send those to me as well, I'm happy to take that and to share it with her. Going on to correspondence very quickly, I think, did anybody else receive invitations to participate in the South Elementary School's annual Leaders Are Readers Day? Okay. That's Tuesday, March 4th. Please RSVP. If you noticed in the superintendent update, one of the things we got was a list of town meeting articles and their progress, and that was because I've been corresponding with a member of the public who's asked those questions, so I owe you an email, and I will make sure you get that information. But, I appreciate Dr. Beta getting that together and having that information for us. Our next regular meeting is Tuesday, March 11th, but we will likely have a special meeting on Tuesday, February 25th, right, make notes here, for the purposes of interviewing the candidate for the superintendent, pending her acceptance of our invitation.
And if I can add,
Yes.
there's also in the recommended timeline proposed TBD special school committee meetings on, it says March 3rd, it should be March 4th. That was the Monday, that should be a Tuesday, I think. March 4th and then March 11th to move that process along.
Okay, sounds good. And we can, if we need to, those should be fairly quick, we can do those two specials online or look at virtual options or something like that as well, if that makes sense. But thank you all for your work in doing all of this at the extra meetings. If there's nothing else, can I have a motion to adjourn? I thought everyone would jump at that. Second?
Second.
Second by Lindsay. Has been moved and seconded. All roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's carried. 0.
No mistake.
The meeting is adjourned at
8 o'clock.
9:41.
Wilkins.
Yes. Thank you all for coming, and good night.